Hello, everyone. I'm so excited today. Oh, it's all about the foundations of reading. It's all about reading. You know how important reading is. And I have a powerhouse team for you today. Today, we have Miss Tracy Bergman. She's the Executive Director for Literacy in Hillsborough County Public Schools. We have Angela Schroden. Whoop, whoop. She is the supervisor for elementary reading. We have Mary Navarre. She's a supervisor for 6-8 literacy. And we have my friend Laurie Riddell. Hey, Laurie. She is the supervisor for high school, 9 through 12 reading, secondary reading. So we have whatever grade level your child is in, we have it here for you. So you're going to find out some very, very important information. And I'm going to turn it over to the executive director, Tracy. Tracy, welcome and take it away.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. My team and I are very excited to present at this month's installment of Hillsborough County's Power Hour. And as Angela told us, we are indeed presenting the foundations of reading. And so we're going to talk today about several things. First, we're going to talk about why literacy. Why is it so important for us to know about literacy as parents and as people that work with your students, kind of what our perspective is and what the key aspects of literacy are. We're going to share some resources with you as well. I'm going to talk about assessment and data information. And then we're going to talk about ways that you can support your child at home, both by working with your child as well as by conversing with your child's teacher and engaging with the school. So first, why literacy? Why is it so important for you all as parents to know a lot about the content of literacy and to really stress literacy within your home and within the school environment? So first, literacy is a tool. And so what you want to know, it's the way that people make sense of the world. It's the engagement piece that they have with all that's going on. And as our population expands, technology gets bigger, the world, we start communicating with people that we've never communicated with before, as we've seen, especially with COVID-19, the ability to communicate and interact with everybody around us is even more important. And that's a quote off of the National Council of Teachers of English blog, and it's just huge. Literacy is everything. It's the way we read, we write, we talk, we listen to each other. It's how we communicate. And if we don't have those literacy skills, and if we as teachers and educators don't build those literacy skills in school, we're doing a disservice to our students. So the state of Florida included this quote in their new standards, and I wanted to share it with you guys just because I think it's just an important piece of education. We think about not just education, we also think about the importance of literacy within that. And so it says, it's from Frederick Douglass in his Blessings of Liberty and Education speech from 1894. And it says, without education, he lives within the narrow, dark, and grimy walls of ignorance. Education, on the other hand, means emancipation. It means light and liberty. It means the uplifting of the soul of man into the glorious light of truth, the light by which men can only be made free. To deny education to any people is one of the greatest crimes against human nature. It is easy to deny them the means of freedom and the rightful pursuit of happiness, and to defeat the very end of their being. And so we think about that quote and we think about why would the state of Florida include that within our new standards and our new guidelines, really thinking about the importance of literacy as being the center, the core of education. Every subject area that students will engage in, whether it be math, whether it be science, whether it be history, civics, whatever it is, rests on literacy, rests on students being able to read, write, speak, and listen, and do it well, and be able to communicate and understand. Knowledge is power, and literacy definitely plays a role within that and providing our students with that. So again, we thank you for being here today to learn a little bit more about that. One of the most important things that you probably want to know as parents is that we are in the middle of the adoption of new standards in K through 12 English language arts. If you have any students that are in kindergarten through second grade, your students are engaged in the BEST standards. And so those BEST standards are about building the excellence in student thinking. And so the standards themselves, well, standards are standards, right? Reading is reading. They do have some shifts that are critical that you may be seeing in our K2 classrooms that perhaps if you have older students or students from, that have gone to school previously, maybe didn't see so much of. And some of that includes orthotic skills. Some of it includes knowledge-based learning and connections to the arts, to the sciences, and to social studies and history. The best standards themselves were created with input from educators, from parents, from community members, all across the state. And so they made some adaptations rather from the Common Core and implemented these standards. So if you're interested in these, we can certainly provide a link to a PDF, or you can simply Google Florida Best Standard and they'll come right up for you. So I want to take a second just to talk about some of the key aspects of literacy, because a lot of times when we think about literacy just as being reading, right? Reading with students, building students' ability to read, building students' reading levels in different pieces. But reading and literacy itself actually encompasses so much more. So again, as we talked about, it is reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And all of those deserve their equal parts. So it's not necessarily that one is necessarily more important than the other. And you may think about it, they develop over time across a continuum, right? Our kids are listening to us from the time that they're born. They slowly start to learn how to speak and engage in that conversation. Then we start to show them words, letters, things that they might recognize, right? They suddenly learn the Golden Arches is McDonald's. It means, it means cheeseburgers and fries. That big old ice cream cone thing means that, twisty treat, here we are. And then eventually they take that into writing, starting more with maybe drawings, maybe scribbles, that eventually evolves into the essay writing that we see across our upper elementary grades and into middle school and high school. Literacy is all of those, and all of those deserve their opportunity within the classroom. And so we just wanted to make sure that that part is clear in terms of the purpose of literacy and kind of that idea of what that word means. So one of the things that, while we are born to do a lot of things and are able to do a lot, we are born to cry, we are born to eat, some like me, maybe a little too much, but that's okay. So we're born to do a lot, but one of the things we are not born to do, unfortunately, is read. Reading is a very complex process. When we have to navigate things that somebody meant, when you think about it from a reader, right? A book is written from somebody else's perspective. I got to take somebody else's ideas that they put on a page and somehow take all those letters and those words and put them in my head and make sense of it and then be able to talk to somebody else about it. It's a complex process. It's not just memorization. It's not just knowing 2 + 2 is 4, or that, the capital of Florida is Tallahassee. It's really engaging in a lot of brain work and a lot of research around brain science, as well as just, science around the research of literacy itself and how students move through progressions and really pick up the skills and strategies necessary to be readers. Reading consists of 6 areas. In all 6 areas, depending on where the student is in terms of their grade levels, is where you see a little bit more emphasis, right? When you think about kindergarten, 1st grade, pre-K even, we spend a lot of time in the area of oral language. And oral language is just that, talking. And a lot of times it's forgotten, right? We want kids, a lot of times, how are my kids behaving? Oh, he's quiet, he listens. That's great if he's quiet and listens in school, but we really need him to talk. We need to have those conversations, and ways that we can help with that at home, of course, are encouraging your kids to talk, having those open conversations, having those open opportunities for students to talk about their day, to talk about what they see, what they notice, what they're reading about. Anything that they do from the very young age is critical in their learning of literacy. They start to learn phrasing, they start to learn vocabulary, they start to make associations between words and ideas, and really build their language skills as well as their listening comprehension. We then move into phonological awareness, and you'll notice there's a picture of an ear, and that's because phonological awareness references just that, what we hear. So a lot of times we think immediately, we kind of skip that part and go straight to phonics, right? Can you sound out the words? Can you tell me the letters in the words? But when we think about phonological awareness, we're thinking about the sounds we hear in the words that we hear. So for example, the word cat. How many sounds do I hear in the word cat? K, at. 3 sounds. Sounds pretty easy, but for a lot of our kids, they struggle distinguishing between the sounds. Okay, the other way to think about that is if I tell you, cat, what word do you actually hear? Can you hear those different pieces? Can you start to hear maybe if I said the word church, can you hear ch and put it all together? So those kinds of things, can we hear them? Can we listen to them? Can we segment and blend our sounds even before we get to letters? That is critical for our kids to understand, because when they do take it to letters and take it into phonics, they have to know how words are made. They have to know what sounds, what makes up a word. And those are sometimes, we immediately want our kids to go from talking to reading. But there are some processes that the brain has to kind of go through, and understanding those sounds is one of them. That takes us into phonics, which is probably, like I said, one of the most common things that parents, teachers, we hear a lot about phonics instruction. Word work might be the way you hear it if kids are talking about it. And that is when we start manipulating the letters, we start associating letters with sounds, and we start saying, so if I have at, what letters can I make with that? How do I move the letters around to make cat? What happens if I change that first letter, right? And I make the word bat, what letter would that mean? So that's kind of the beginning of phonics. And phonics does go along on a continuum. So we start with that idea of just knowing just our vowel, some of our vowel sounds, some of our consonant sounds, and making words around that. And then slowly but surely building through short vowel sounds into consonant, into words that are more complex, words that maybe have that long A sound. So from going from, let's say, cave, making that word, as opposed to making the word cat, and understanding that A makes those 2 sounds and why it does it and how it does it. That's that part of phonics. And eventually phonics goes all the way up as we move across into all those grade levels, into multisyllabic words. So suddenly I'm not just working with cat, maybe I'm working with catastrophe, and having to chunk out those words and hear all those sounds and syllables through it. So really building it out. So again, it's that idea of putting those letters and being able, that's where your spelling comes in. And a lot of times we see that connection as well between phonics as well as writing, right? Because I have to be able, not only do I have to be able to recognize the word, but also have to be able to write the word cat. And so when you think about how I write the word cat, what do? At. And I try to write out at, and I teach my children how to do that piece with it. So it also has that reciprocal effect with writing, even though phonics tends to be more of that reading skill. The next area of reading is fluency. And the reason why we have the little picture of the drama and comedy is because it's just that. It's that expression. It's that accuracy. It's that prosody. What does it sound like? So sometimes when we ask our kids to read, it sounds very choppy, right? They're reading word for word. The cat jumped. And so they're not able to make a lot of sense. It doesn't sound fluid. It doesn't sound the way we would want a reader to sound. It doesn't sound like that conversational piece, again, kind of taking it back to oral language. So fluency is just that, it's that practice of reading and making it sound smooth, making it sound like it makes sense, like it would if I was saying it. As we move into the upper grades, we start to also get into dialogue, right? We read books where characters are talking to each other. Are our kids able to make different voices, change their way, change the way they speak when different characters are speaking? As we get into exclamations, we get into questions, we start to see commas in our sentences in the books that we read with our kids. Do students know what to do and how to read that when they get to those? Do they understand the meaning there? So really kind of taking, a lot of times we hear fluency is just how fast I read. It's not a race to get done with it first. And sometimes that kind of, oh, you read so many words in this particular time frame. Well, yes, we want kids to know words. We want kids to have that automaticity. We also know that it's about, does it make sense when I read it? Am I reading it in a way that it makes sense? Not am I reading it in a way that I get done faster? The next area of reading is vocabulary. And vocabulary is words, word knowledge, word understanding, and knowing the amount of words that are out there for kids to read. There is absolutely no way possible for teachers to teach every single word that a child will ever need to know. How we learn words is by reading them in context, by talking about them, by having conversations, by reading texts that are around different content areas, nonfiction, fiction, and a variety of text. So we also have that vocabulary piece that's critical to the last area, which is comprehension. And as students move from third grade all the way on up into middle school and high school, that one with the light bulb is just that. Do kids understand what they're reading? So again, I can sound out every word. I might be able to hear my sounds. You might read to me and I might be okay. But when I actually read that book, I open it up, whatever it might be, do I understand it? And that's the question. Can I tell you what it's about? Can I tell you who the characters are? Can I tell you a major event? Those are the key, kind of those key pieces about comprehension. And that's our ultimate goal, is that fluent reader that has the word knowledge to get to the comprehension, because they have the oral language skills, the phonics skills, and the knowledge about the sounds and how words work. So another key piece is knowing knowledge, right? So when I read a book, I don't just read a book to read the words. Okay, I am a huge fan of police procedurals. I have no idea why. I guess I grew up in the world of Law and Order and CSI. So I love that kind of stuff. And I've learned a lot about crime scene investigation, about police procedurals, all sorts of kind of things through reading, right? I don't really read things just because and not get anything out of it. Even at work, at the office, I built a lot of knowledge about policies at work, right? Because I got to read a ton of emails. I might read the newspaper. I might read, some kind of article about information. It's how we learn. Again, knowledge is power. And usually the way we gain that knowledge, whether it be through social media, through text, whatever kind of text it might be, it's through the literacy environment. So obviously, the more we know about a topic, the easier it is to understand it. And so a lot of our units and a lot of the work we do in elementary school, all the way on up to middle school and high school, especially as students begin to move across and do different, take history and take science classes and things like that in middle school and high school, topic-based literacy becomes really important because we're providing the background knowledge for our students. And so we read about content and we bring in that nonfiction piece. We're really bringing in the vocabulary. We're giving kids that foundation of something to think about, something to read about, and we're improving our language and our comprehension pieces. So if you have a child at home that, let's say, loves cats, then maybe we want to read about all different kinds of cats, taking care of a cat, big cats versus not so big cats, wild cats versus household cats, how to catch a feral cat, whatever it might be. The idea is that I'm encouraging a lot of reading around that topic. Why? Because that's how kids get deep learning. They don't really get deep learning reading one book, right? Reading, one mystery book or one informational, book on true crime isn't going to teach me about the police procedural process. What's really going to get me there is reading multiple books by multiple authors that take place in different places and kind of putting it all together. We also always want to go for the volume of reading. How much reading are our students doing, both in school and at home? Multimedia, and I know this one is always one we're always like, ooh, we got to be careful, right? But multimedia can also provide a lot of opportunity for students to build knowledge and also for their literacy pieces. If you think about how information is provided now, think about watching the news and you see the taglines on the bottom of the news. That's a lot of information coming quickly. Think about scrolling through an Instagram page or looking on a Facebook piece where I have to make my decisions too about what's real, what's not so real, fake news, not so fake news, what kind of fits into where I'm going in terms of my reading. So looking at multimedia, looking at YouTube videos and different things with kids can help be a place where they can gain some background knowledge and also begin to discern and find, make their own decisions and judgments as they get older about the sources that they're reading from. And then finally, where we're looking at diversity and culture and multiple perspectives, right? We learn about other places. I can't go everywhere, but I can certainly read from different perspectives. I can read from different cultures and I can have conversations with people too as well and kind of learn their perspectives as well. So this idea of building knowledge is critical in our new standards as we move forward with the best standards that are coming through. That is one of the things where we're not just teaching kids how to read words in isolation. We're teaching kids the importance of reading these words so that we can pull that knowledge in and we can help students really gain some content. So back to vocabulary, just some critical things to think about. First of all, the more we know about words, the more connections we can make in our brains, right? And concepts and ideas are improved. The second bullet is key there, that by third grade, vocabulary is determined by parental interaction. A lot of the background and things that students have come from parents, right? Experiences you've provided your child, times and discussions that you've read with them, different things that we've done in terms of going over, asking them that simple question. What did you learn at school? Nothing. Okay, let's try that again. What did you learn at school? And having conversations. Oh, so you learned about the Revolutionary War. Let's talk about it. Or we learned about our community. Let's talk about it. But after third grade, it really becomes critical in terms of the reading instruction and the content that's having it. They learn their vocabulary through the reading, through the books they read, by making meeting and having conversations. As we move into the upper grades, we also start looking at not just studying what sounds do those letters make, but studying the idea of root words, prefixes, suffixes, and Latin and Greek origins. So knowing what is the makeup of a word? And if I'm doing the makeup of this word and the meaning of this word, how does that impact my understanding of another word, right? How does that look at the relationships between words and how can I use that? So the next piece is looking at the reading and writing connection. Reading and writing, again, both part of literacy, both are truly connected. When we look at the different types of writing that students do in elementary, middle, and high school, we're looking at topic first. Students write about a variety of topics. Some topics might be personal to them. Other topics might be related to the content. Some might be teacher generated. Some might be student generated. As we move into the upper grades, middle school and high school, a lot more of that writing becomes more of that academic writing, right? Where they're really looking at the topic, they're looking at a text and they're writing to that specific piece. We tend to look at purpose in three ways. I'm either writing to tell a story. I'm telling something about it in terms of being narrative. I'm writing to tell my opinion, or I'm writing to explain something that I like. How I do that could be through different genres, right? I can be telling my story through a comic strip. Could be telling my story through a graphic novel. I could be writing my opinion. I could be writing an essay. I could be writing an email. I could be writing a speech. It's all kind of dependent on the audience. And so the biggest thing is making sure that students always know, who are they writing to? And that includes whether they're taking the FSA and we're having that conversation with them, giving them that visual of who it is, who's in front of them. Or it might just be kind of setting them up. So today as a fifth grader, you're going to be teaching kindergartners. That means your language in that piece is going to be a little bit different, right? Compared to if I'm teaching the 12th graders at the local high school, or if I'm teaching, a group of parents about something that we're doing in school. So kind of teaching them how sometimes the audience and who I'm writing for or who I'm speaking to makes a difference. But reading and writing, they're married. And so we try to kind of keep them connected in terms of what we're studying and reading and how we learn from as a reader. We can apply that into our writing. Sometimes we study a text and we look at it and say, what meanings am I supposed to get out of it, right? Like what's kind of the best part, the fun part, the important part. And then I also dig deep into that same text. And instead I say, what did the writer do here? What cool things did they do? Did they use onomatopoeia? Did they use figurative language? Did they use a lot of time words to kind of help me understand what's going on here? So again, that marriage between reading and writing is critical. So we put it all together, and this is a very technical diagram that actually has a very simple piece. Basically what we're saying is that everything in the red, language, backgrounds, vocabulary, all of those pieces, coupled with that foundational skills, the phonics, the phonological awareness, and sight words, we need all of it. All of it comes together and it gets woven together and it makes a skilled reader. And a skilled reader is fluent, and a skilled reader is able to comprehend and understand what they read. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori Riddell, our high school supervisor, who is going to share a little bit about our resources. Lori, I'll click for you.
Can you hear me now? All right. I am so excited to share the multitude of resources that we have that span from kindergarten through 12th grade. I will focus primarily on the elementary and the middle schools, since looking at who's in our audience, that seems to be the majority in our group. So we'll start with kindergarten through 2nd grade. And as Tracy mentioned, they are in the beginning stages, or this year is their first year of implementing the best standards. So their core curriculum, or the curriculum that is used across the board for everyone, is Wonders. And that is where the reading instruction is occurring for all students. And then they have a supplemental program that is SIPS, and it focuses on developing students, as Tracy pointed out, those decoding skills, the phonological awareness, the phonics or decoding, where they're moving into that fluency piece. That's all built into that SIPS program, and it's for students who need that additional support focused on the phonemic awareness and phonics piece. And then both in kindergarten through 5th grade, iReady is used as twofold. It's 2 pieces in one. So it is our progress monitoring tool that is used to measure students' growth, but it's also an instructional tool, because what is so fantastic about it is that it meets the students where they are based on that progress monitoring, and then adjusts the instruction that they are receiving. So it focuses on the foundational skills, as Tracy mentioned, which are our phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency to some degree, and then into the comprehension at the student's level. So that's the strength of the iReady piece. And then if we move to grades 3-5, you'll see that we're still implementing the LAFS standards in grades 3-5 for this year. So they're using Journeys as their core. They have supplemental materials that support the comprehension skills with Ready LAFS. And then again, the iReady that we just talked about. Now, if I move right into 6-12, you're going to see some commonalities from grade 6 to grade 12. In both middle and high, we use Springboard as our core English language arts curriculum. So all students are enrolled and utilizing the Springboard curriculum. And then you'll see Paths to College and Career. That is the curriculum that we use with our students that are enrolled in our reading courses. So we have additional reading courses that are in 6th through 12th grade. In 6th through 10, we use Paths to College and Career. And then in 11th and 12th, we're focusing on the success of meeting the reading graduation benchmark at that point. You'll see Brightfish Learning in our reading courses. And with our new standards, there is a shift to focusing on and ensuring that in 6th through 12th grade, our students have mastered those complex skills in phonics at a higher level. And so in our reading classes, we still have to provide some additional support in that phonics area, vocabulary development, fluency, and comprehension. And Brightfish provides that individualized instructional support again at those key components of reading development. And then lastly, we have the ACT/SAT prep. So again, we have some supplemental resources that are available to, the first 2 are available to everyone. So Canvas is our learning management system. And I'm sure even in elementary, we have quite a few teachers that are using the Canvas side to send communication to students, to send assignments to students, especially if they are unfortunately quarantined. Canvas is a nice platform that allows student interaction and teacher interaction, and allows the instruction to be presented both face-to-face and digital if necessary. Myon is a program that we partner with Hillsborough County as well as the public schools to provide all students with access to Myon, pre-K, early childhood, all the way through 12th grade if need be. Myon is a platform that provides access to text digitally with the option in many cases and many texts for the audio reading of the text, as well as a variety of topics, genres. So it really supports the students' independent reading and can be used at home and at school. So it's a super exciting way to get your students at home even to engage with text without having to purchase hardback books or books that are actually there. And sometimes you think they only read it once. Well, go to Myon, because teachers can find, or parents and students can find topics of their interest. I mean, you would be amazed if you haven't already checked out Myon. And then Newsella is new to us this year, and it is utilized, again, it can be utilized, I believe, from 3rd grade through 12th grade. We really are using it in 6th through 12th grade, with the opportunity to expose students to both informational text and literary that is on current events and relevant to what students are seeing and hearing and their interests. And then lastly, our newest addition is paper tutoring, which is for 6th through 12th grade. It covers all content areas and topics. And if your student, this has nothing to do with quarantine, but it can support quarantine time. But even if your student is working in an English class or their language arts class, and they're writing a paper, and they just want that quick on the spot feedback, they can submit the paper into paper tutoring and receive feedback about where they might make some edits, how they might modify where their paper is going, for that instant feedback. And then also in any content area. So in an English language arts classroom or in a reading classroom, they're reading a text and struggling with what that might be about, or how to comprehend the text or understand the words within the text. They can submit it into paper again, get automatic live tutoring and live responses to what their questions may be, including math, science, and social studies as well. So we're super excited to have that opportunity for live tutoring for everybody, and it's a 24/7. So that's our super exciting resource.
Thank you, Lori. And so now we're going to just take a look. So kind of shifting from the informational piece and what we have to offer more to that classroom-based piece, right? What do I do as a parent when I go into the school and the teacher starts rattling things off that I'm not sure of? And then kind of leading into how do I support that at home? So the first thing, normally when you go into a parent conference, there's some things that you need to know that tie and connect in with assessment. You may hear the teacher say, your child scored this on the iReady diagnostic. So what in the world is a diagnostic, right? That's a big word. So a diagnostic is just that. It's a diagnosis. It tells us and gives us more information in terms of where our child is struggling. So our students in K-5 do take the iReady diagnostic. It assesses students in phonemic awareness at the younger grade levels. It assesses them in phonics, it assesses them in vocabulary, and it assesses them in comprehension. It does not have a fluency piece. However, it is computer-based, which is important to keep in mind. Some kids are really good with paying attention on the computer. Other kids, it's not so much, not their gig. They see a computer and their mind starts to wander. But generally, like I said, one of the diagnostics we use is indeed iReady. And so again, purpose, diagnosis. You may also hear, oh my goodness, your child scored such and such on the FSA assessment if they're, in that wheelhouse of 3rd on up. When you think about summative, that's an end of year assessment. That's an end of teaching. I'm kind of done teaching it. Let me see how you did assessment. So the FSA is given to our students in April and May, depending on which topic they're taking, as well as some opportunities for retakes for 11th and 12th graders. That assumes that all learning has already happened, and this is how the child did. So what happens in the middle of all that, right? That's great. I know how they did after I taught it, but how are they doing? Did you do anything during the instruction to kind of let me know that they were struggling in the first place? That's where we built in our formative assessments and our check for understanding. So those are those more informal assessments, those teacher created assessments, perhaps chapter assessments, mid-chapter checkups, mid-unit checkups, on things. They may be a question that students have to answer. It may be a sticky note that they respond and do a short answer on. Maybe what we call an exit ticket, which you might hear that term, which is just a fancy term for a check for understanding, or just a quick question that they answered based on the daily learning. We ask teachers to collect that information, so we're not waiting until the end of instruction. And if you're in a conference and you're in a situation where a teacher say your kid's struggling, one of the things I would ask is say, so how are they doing on their checks for understanding? How are you checking them for understanding daily during that time, during their reading time? How do you know they got it? Because that's critical for us as educators to know so that we can support your child. We also have a screener. We provide that in kindergarten through second grade. And that just kind of tells us this is kind of where your child is in relation to some key foundational skills that they may need to know. Some kids come to us in kindergarten knowing a whole lot, right? They know how to sound out words, they know their letters. So having them sit there during whole group instruction and relearn something they already know wouldn't really be purposeful. So this kind of tells us, nope, they're ready for this. They're ready to move on. Here's how I can push them forward. Or oops, pause. They're not ready. Let me go back and let me provide some additional instruction in that. So we do have that for kindergarten through second grade students. And I would strongly recommend you ask the teacher to show it to you so that you can take a look and see what's on there. We have a baseline and a mid-year. I'm given in our middle school and high schools. The baseline and the mid-year are a little bit different structure, and that they do assess what the students will be assessed on at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year. I know you're probably thinking, why would you do that? You haven't taught anything. But that's, again, also to make sure to know, what do students know? And so you may see those first scores in middle school and high school not being so hot. That's okay. Don't panic yet. That's why we also give the mid-year. But again, it's that conversation of, so you're telling me, my child got a 20% on the baseline assessment. Again, how are they doing in their classwork? What checks for understanding do we have? Because they're going to take a mid-year, kind of closer to that semester pause, that December, January time. And when they take that, you're going to want to see growth. That's the ultimate goal, is growth. Have they improved? Because if so, that means they learned something. And then we have progress monitoring assessments throughout the way. How are students doing in work aligned to standards? And are they, again, looking at growth? That's our ultimate goal for all of our students, is that they all make that year's worth of growth at minimal across the school year. So that's also those other types of questions you're asking. How is my child growing? Not where they are, but have they grown? Have they moved in terms of their progress? And how do you know? You may hear something, multi-tiered systems of support, also just shortened to it. We live in acronym soup in education. So sometimes you hear the acronym MTSS. Your child is an MTSS or RTI, response to intervention. And your child is receiving tier 3 instruction or small group instruction or intensive instruction. What does that mean? Well, that basically means that your child, based on scores, perhaps didn't score where they needed to be. So we're providing some additional instruction. We may be saying, your child needs that daily small group just to kind of review what they've learned and kind of give them some strategies so that they're ready for tomorrow's learning, or that we can go over what we did yesterday so that they can be successful in future lessons. Or they may have a gap that's from, they may be a second grader who's still struggling with some of, the sounding out words like cat. And so we need to go back and we need to reteach some of those phonics skills. We may find that fluency is an issue, right? Maybe those kids, again, it's choppy. They're not getting it when they read it. So we have to provide that additional support. It's important to know that every student is part of the multi-tiered system of support. It's not just the strugglers. It's not just the gifted kids. It's not just the ESE kids. All kids move in and out of these levels depending on what it is. Some kids, for example, they love informational text. I'm reading informational text, so my comprehension is skyrocketed. It doesn't matter. Maybe you just happen to get lucky and, again, I get to read about cats. Suddenly I'm all good. But you asked me to read a story and I'm really not into it, right? It's not my cup of tea. I'm not into folktales. I don't want to read a folktale. Don't make me read a folktale. And suddenly I'm struggling a little bit more. So it kind of depends on what we're doing, and when we're doing it. So students do move through that. The other thing that we have put into place in terms of what instruction looks like when your child goes to school, you drop them off and you're thinking, what do you do all day? Well, we have 3 levels of instruction that happen daily in the elementary level and throughout the course of the week in the middle school and the high school level as we move forward. We have whole group instruction, right? So that's just like kind of that traditional classroom, right? Where we have our teacher teaching and our students, receiving the information. We encourage a lot of that collaborative structure though, where students are able to talk, to build on each other's training, to work together on completing different activities. We have teacher-led small group. So again, teacher pulling small groups with purpose, noticing how the students are doing during that whole group lesson and kind of responding to that, asking questions maybe of them, rereading texts that they've already read, providing supplemental texts to help guide their thinking. And then we also, again, have that progress monitoring, that assessment piece that's letting the teacher know how my child is doing at these different checkpoints across the time. So knowing all that and knowing the different assessments and kind of the structure, want to make sure that you understand your role as parents too, and that you guys play such a huge role in your child's success. So when we think about parent involvement and what it means, students who have parents that are involved, and we're going to talk about it, the word involvement doesn't mean being on the PTA or being the room mom or doing anything like that. It just simply means keeping up with child's grades, having those conversations with your children about what's going on in school. Perhaps it means, attending the parent-teacher conferences, attending the open house and meeting the teacher, and just being visible within the school. I know sometimes, comfort levels are a little bit different, but that's the idea of what parent involvement means. It doesn't necessarily, like I said, doesn't mean, being in charge of the bake sale or whatever it might be. But we show again, and here are some of the things: better attendance rates, social skills, graduation rates, enrollment in higher level programs when parents are involved, when parents are asking the questions and advocating for their children. Sometimes our kids need you as parents to advocate. You know your child better than anybody. And so that's the critical part that parents play. So we can support our child's academic success simply by talking to them, knowing what they're doing. Communicate with school personnel regularly. Don't be afraid to email your teacher. With email, and you don't even have to pick up the phone, send the teacher an email. Ask a question if you're not sure about something. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I'd rather have you ask than wonder. Learn about what's at your school, what after school programs are available, what Saturday school programs, if possible, what community resources are available through rec centers in different places, libraries. Participate in school-related activities if you have the time or the availability during that time. Number 5, read to or with your child. Set that time, even if it's 10, 15 minutes a day, read with them right before they go to bed, read to them, read side by side, set up that time where you're reading and they're reading, whatever it might look like at your house. And then the last one is probably most critical, because again, thinking back to those oral language skills, talk to your child about school and don't accept when you ask, what did you do at school today? And the child says, nothing, I didn't learn nothing. We can't accept that answer. Really, you learned nothing. Let's dig deeper. And again, a lot of teachers, especially again, younger grade levels, put out weekly newsletters. Look at it. Use that as a reference to ask them questions. A lot of the content and scopes and sequences in terms of middle school and high school are also available. Use that to have those conversations with your child. And the biggest thing we can't stress it enough is talk to your child's teacher, talk to the child, talk to the guidance counselor at your school if you're having issues, whatever it might be. So some questions to ask your child's teacher. The first one, is my child reading on grade level? That's important for you to know. Where does the teacher see your child reading? And then if the teacher says no, it's okay to ask the question, well, what does that look like? What does a grade level book in second grade really look like, right? Like it looks a little different in second grade than it does in sixth grade than it does in 10th grade. Ask your child to show you those examples. Talk about the assessment. How do you know my child's not reading on grade level or they are? What are we going to do about it? How frequently are we going to meet? Are you going to not see me again till the end of the year when it's too late for us to do anything? You've got to, ask those teachers some of those hard questions. Another question that you could also ask is, well, what are you going to do to make sure my child is reading at grade level? And if you have the opposite and your child's already coming in reading at grade level, the other question to say is, what are you going to do to enhance my kids, right? So that they keep making the improvements. Just because they're on grade level doesn't mean, okay, we're done. That's great. It's September. We have the whole rest of the year. So how are you going to enrich my child? What are we going to do that's going to deepen their understanding within the realm of reading, especially thinking about some of those content level lessons? And so if your child is reading below level, again, thinking about, well, how far below? How do you know? What specific areas? There's a big difference between a child that is struggling in phonics and a child that's struggling in comprehension. And we don't want to assume it's a phonics problem. So you go home, you make word cards, you start shouting out words, you start doing all these things, you put the letters all over the fridge, and that's not even really the issue. So have that conversation. Ask, what can I do at home? A lot of our resources have parent supplemental resources as well that can help you engage with that. iReady has some parent resources you can ask the teacher to print from their side of it. There's also some work in MyOn in terms of comprehension and book projects that you can work on specifically with your child that not only get to the reading, but also get to the reading response. You can also ask, what supports are reading provided to my child? If your child is a speaker of a different language, are they getting support from the ESL teacher or the ESL paraprofessional? Is your child ESE? If so, are they getting supports from somebody in there? Is there somebody else? Maybe there's a resource teacher at the school site or a reading coach that's also providing those supports. And the other question to say is how frequently and for how much time? If it's 15 minutes a week, it might not have the impact. If it's 2 hours a day, well, what else are they missing to get that support? So again, making sure you're aware of what's going on during that reading time in the classroom is critical. I won't read you all these bullets just for the sake of time, but this is just some examples of what a good reading program is. The biggest thing is the idea of time. In elementary school, we have by state mandate, a 90-minute uninterrupted block, and our block is actually an additional 30 minutes for that. So we have 120 minutes. During that time, the number one thing the students should be doing is engaging with text. That means they should be reading, they should be talking, they should be speaking, and they should be listening. And when we talk about listening, we're not talking just about listening to the teacher, right? My teacher shouldn't be droning on for 120 minutes. We have to have those pieces. And again, making sure that you're seeing papers come home from the school. That way that gives you that opportunity, that springboard to talk, clean out your kids' backpacks. I know backpacks are always a thing. Sometimes, when I was a school administrator, I opened a backpack and I'm like, whoa, this hasn't been cleaned out in a long time. Clean it out every week, get into that habit, make that part of your piece, because that's going to help you know what's going on at the school as well. And utilize the library. Ask your child, when's the last time you visited the school library? We don't have books at home. That's fine. We got lots of books in the library. We got books on MyOn, but we also have real books in the library that our students need to be accessing. So making sure we have that. And so again, our number one goal is that we want to have positive attitudes about reading and writing. One of the things we don't want our students to do is say, okay, guys, let's take out this book, or let's take out a piece of paper and a pencil, and we're going to do some writing today, and have every kid in the classroom groan. Because reading and writing isn't going to go away. Again, it's that lifelong skill. So we've got to really teach our kids to have that positive attitude about it. So these are just some prompts. There's some ideas for you as parents that you can do at home. You can invite your child to read with you every day. You can point out different things with words, different things with concepts like moving from left to right, pictures, authors, front of the book, back of the book for really young learners. Read the child's favorite book over and over again. I know I still have copies of my favorite book as a child that my mom used to read to me sitting on my shelf behind me, just because they're my favorites and I can't let them go. Pay attention to words, right? Rhyming words, sounds, different things. Have conversations, bring out vocabulary words for our kids, talk about pictures in the picture books, talk about events, and read just different things, fairy tales, songbooks, poetry, information, stories. So again, a child who can't read well can't learn. Reading is going to open the doors for them. It's not that they can't learn. It's not that they're not able to learn, but they're not given that opportunity. When we're unsuccessful at teaching kids to crack the code of letters and sounds and words and meaning, we're taking away an opportunity for learning from them. And so we really want to make sure that our kids, have that opportunity. And so again, just some additional resources that Lori highlighted. We have MyOn, which is available through Clever. Your child's Clever. iReady is on there. You can also Google Just Reads with the exclamation point on it. Just Reads Florida is a website that has parent resources. They actually have by grade level from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade. What instruction can look like in a classroom for you to pull. You can print, you can look at different activities they have. And additionally, Hillsborough County Public Schools has parent resources available on their website as well. If you go onto the HCPS website and you click parent, is where you'll find everything. So I think that wraps it up for us. I don't know, Angela, I don't know if you're still out there, not Angela Shorten, the other Angela. I don't know if you're still out there.
Thank you.
But we have reached the end.
Oh, that was so great. And I love, love, love your specific strategies for parents to support their children at home. It's one thing to know what their child is doing at school, but if you can't support that at home, it's very hard for you to ask your child the right questions. So thank you, Tracy, for giving our families that great information on specific techniques on what to ask the child's teacher, and what look for. And so let's go now to the chat. I know some of the Q&A questions were answered and some of the chat had been answered. So let's go to see what new questions we have. There's more information. It was just someone asking about tutoring services, and looks like Angela talked to her about if the student is in grade kindergarten through 5th grade, check with the school administration about tutoring services, because we do have there are some services that are available if the child is in 6 through 12. Hillsborough County School recently launched paper to provide a variety of tutoring services, and here's a link for more information. So Angela put that in there. Thank you, Angela.
I'm here to serve.
And she said, she said, talk about books with your children, not to. So I love that. Talk about books. Angela, could you give an example of that?
Oh, sure. So let me think. If we're talking about, just say Harry Potter, right? That's always, for some reason, the one that comes to my mind. There are questions that we can ask about the book, right? Which is, oh, what did you notice that Harry did? You know, what did he do differently? But that's different than talking to kids about their thinking about the book, which would sound something like, well, what would you do if you were in that situation? How would you have handled that? Right? So there's these two different things about, we need to talk about the book because that's important. And we need to talk about thinking because their thinking is equally as important. So, and then even looking at kids, because I have 2 little ones in my house. I have a 9-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, even asking them, so what are you thinking now? Right? Like, that's a generic question you can ask all the time. And what's fascinating is, depending on the age, depending on the book, sometimes kids will talk about, well, this is something we read with the words, but this is sometimes they'll say, this is what I noticed in the picture. And we want kids to do both. So again, going back to, depending on the age, when you're still reading picture books, the pictures are very purposeful and they are put there to really extract a lot of information. So pictures are an entry point to understanding when kids sometimes have difficulty with the actual words and letters, right? So that is nothing to be ashamed of. That's actually something to celebrate when kids are noticing specific details that are happening in the pictures.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And it looks like Lori put some more good resources for ways to talk about books to your children. So families, click on that link and get those resources so that you're able to have those conversations with your children about that. Okay, so we have one about, if my child had a MyOn account for pre-K, do we need a new account for kindergarten? If so, do we request that from the teacher, or is there a place to create a new account? That could be anyone from the team who knows that information.
So once your child enters school, your child should get a Clever account. It's the same way they would log on to iReady. And if your child doesn't know their username or password, the teacher can provide that. Once children log into Clever and the teacher can provide those directions, they'll be able to access MyOn through it. There's a button on Clever, different buttons with different programs, and MyOn is one of them. You click onto it and off you go. You can still go onto the MyOn website as well, but the easiest way to get it connected to what the teacher is doing, a lot of teachers put some assignments and different things in there, would be to go in through Clever. So if your child is in kindergarten and doesn't know their account information, please get that from the child's teacher and you'll be able to go right in.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have a question from Ingrid. She says that her son is in 5th grade. He loves to read, but he is behind in writing. What are some strategies? What can we do to help him?
It was Ingrid. I was going to try and type it, but actually it's just easier to say it out loud. So I'm going to encourage you, if you haven't already done this, one thing I want you to do is to ask the teacher specifically what aspects of writing is she noticing that your child is behind it. And so to get even more specific with you, there are a variety of things that we consider when we're talking about writing. Is it purpose? Is it his focus? Is it his ability to elaborate and write, say, 2 or 3 paragraphs or multiple sentences about a single topic? Is she talking about conventions where we put capital letters at the beginning and there are periods at the end? And so I'm going to encourage you to ask that, because then that will help you know what kind of language and support to use at the house. But in general, I am going to encourage you, Ingrid, just like we've talked all night, and we've put some things in the chat about how important it is to view reading and writing as tools and to be excited about it at the house and it not become a chore. A large part of why kids will buy into either reading or writing at home or even in school is that they have choices. So for example, if your son is just over the moon, crazy about, I don't know, Minecraft or dogs, or like my own son, trains. If you mention trains, he'll do anything. Then I want you to use that as the springboard or the launch pad to him being willing to do some writing at home. So like I said, I have 2 young ones at home, 4th grader and a kindergarten, and we have lots of books of just copy paper that is stapled and it makes like what looks like an actual book. And for some reason, my own kids who don't love to write either, they will fill those things up because it seems like a real book, versus if I said, here's a piece of paper and I want you to take your pencil and I want you to write a paragraph or a 5-paragraph essay. Somehow the idea that they are creating a thing that can include pictures or illustrations. So all of those are ways: choice, options, his ability to write on things that he really, really likes, giving him maybe he gets to use markers or colored pencils. All of those kind of things that they don't always get to do in school are often the thing that will be the hook for kids to be willing to keep doing these types of things at home, for sure.
Awesome strategies. Now, I don't see any more questions, but I do have a question, because this was something that my daughter struggled with when she was in school. Now, my youngest is 26. So, but fluency, I know fluency sometimes has an impact on your child's understanding of text that they're reading. What are some great strategies that you would encourage our families to do at home in terms of increasing their fluency? Or is it even a thing now? Is it important anymore?
Yes. Yes, it is, Angela. So Angela Fullwood hit the head on the target. So what has not changed? There are some things that will never change, no matter what standards we have, no matter what school your child goes to. And one of those is fluency directly impacts comprehension. You can be a slower reader and still comprehend. You can. But depending on if kids are reading, whether it's word by word and short phrases and longer phrases, it does have an impact on comprehension. So how do you build fluency? One of the easiest ways, and Tracy mentioned it earlier, especially for the younger children, they inherently love to reread books that they like. So rereading of books and turning over some of the reading is one of the easiest ways to build fluency. And I will have to say, this one especially works for my own child, who adores taking videos of himself. So asking a child to read a passage while they record themselves, and then to listen back and ask them, what do you notice about the way this sounds? What do you think we can change if we read it again? Which part of this do you think we can read differently to make it make sense or to sound differently? So, and then you can take, whether it's a pencil, whether it's a highlighter, highlight that section, and then have them record it again to see, do they sound any different? So there is something about young children inherently at that age, and again, I'm mainly speaking of K-5, that it is very egocentric, right? That they enjoy seeing themselves and hearing themselves. And so I would tap into that. Most of us have that ability on our phones. And so this is going to be the one time, or one of the few times, when I would highly recommend, so if your child is reading here, drop it down a level, because one of the things I want them to experience is, what does it sound like when it sounds like fluent reading? And it's easier to do that in a text that's a little bit easier. And then you can gradually increase the level of text to make it more on grade level. But they do need to feel what it feels like to read smoothly with intonation, noticing punctuation, all of those things. But for the most part, that video is going to be the hook.
Good. Are there any middle or, I know for elementary, are there any middle school or high school strategies for those fluent to increase their fluency?
Hi, everyone. We in middle school still like to provide our students with an opportunity to read aloud. It perhaps looks a little bit different in grades 6 through 8. One of our favorite strategies to encourage students to engage in academic discourse in the classroom is called Read and Say Something. So that's, one of the ways that we really promote student engagement. So they're given either an informational or a literary text. Each person within a group of students will take turns reading a section or a chunk of the text out loud. And that ability to be in a low stakes, low stress environment. So I'm not reading out loud and practicing my fluency in front of the entire class perhaps, but instead in a smaller, more intimate group setting is one of the ways that we encourage our students to read text, because we're focused on comprehension and analysis in the middle grades, but also giving them that opportunity to practice reading out loud and that oral rehearsal that comes along with, like I said, a smaller group situation where they're reading out loud with their peers. So that's a recommendation for the middle grades. And I know Lori in high school would also second that strategy in 9-12 as well.
I might jump in with another one that you could potentially do at home. So, and it's something fun. You could make it an evening, I know, but find a script online, a reader's theater. So you could assign each person in the house a role within the reader's theater, but it then makes it a fun activity that the whole family is participating in, and you're reading a play. You can go and find a lot of scripts from actual movies and TV shows. So you might pick one of their favorite movies and then have a movie night, and you all read the script or part of the script as a way of also practicing that fluency. But then it's fun because they're becoming that character. So that's another thing that would work, as well as something that you could do at home.
Awesome. Great strategies. We do have another question. How do I help my 5th grader with comprehension? I know Angela touched on that a little bit in her other answer. Angela, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So comprehension, I would start, remember how I talked earlier about, we can talk about the book and then we can talk about the thinking, right? And so this really has to do, I'm going to go back to that. I know that's I don't have anything better than my hands, but I want to go back to that part about beginning with the idea, if a child can't tell you what's happening in the book, then it's really tough for them to tell you, this is what I'm thinking about it, right? Because we want kids to actually do at least 2 things when it comes to comprehension. We want them to have what we would refer to in the education world as literal comprehension. I can tell you what is literally happening in this book, the who, what, where, when, why, all of those things. But then we have this other piece of comprehension that we would call inferential, and we want them to go beyond. So it is being able to respond to questions that aren't necessarily there. And Miss Fullwood, I'm going to try and think of a specific example right now, right? I'm going to try and think of a specific example without having a book in front of me right now. So it would be I don't know, if it said, Angela Angela was at home crying in the corner, right? So one of the things we would want to say, depending on what was happening in the book, I would look at my 9-year-old and say, well, what do you think happened? What's going on with Angela? Why is she so upset? And the book may not say, oh, she had a bad day at school, but there might be a picture there that gives them a clue, or a hint there that gives them a clue. And so we want them to do that thinking beyond. And then I'm gonna, if anybody's taking notes, I don't know how you are as a parent, but if you are taking notes, I'm gonna encourage you to jot down this question. To ask your child, tell me what you did to understand this page, this paragraph, because you don't want to go too far in the book before you ask kids. And if they look at you and they give you, because this is what happens to mine, sometimes you just go, I don't know. Really, I don't know. Then that might be a signal for you that they're not exactly sure that, or that they don't know yet that their role as a reader is to think while they're reading. So that may be a time that you say to them, well, let me share with you what I'm thinking and let me tell you why. Because it's the why part that you would be telling them as the best reader in the room, right? As the best reader in the room, it's the why part of, well, I noticed this title or this section or this detail that they can then take and apply themselves as a reader. So sometimes it's just that they don't really understand, oh, I'm supposed to think while I read, not just at the end, because really reading is an active activity, right? You're thinking before it, you're thinking during it, and you're thinking after it. And sometimes it just takes a lot of practice for kids to really become, this very fancy word, metacognitive. I am thinking about my thinking. Hopefully that was helpful.
That was super, super helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I told y'all this was a powerhouse team. I told you all this was a powerhouse team. And I am so excited. Thank you all for being with, thank you, Literacy team, for being with us today. We so appreciate you and all of the information that you've given our parents. Are there any last words, Tracy, that you have to say on behalf of the team?
No, just that our team appreciates everyone coming out tonight and learning more about literacy. Obviously, our team is small but mighty, and we are very passionate about what we do. We really do believe that literacy is at the heart of everything. And so we appreciate all of our families taking the time to join us tonight and to learn a little bit more about that and to support us in the work of making students as literate as we possibly can, so they can be most successful in college, career, and life.
All right. So with that, we want to thank you all again, parents, for being here. We will put we'll send you a copy of our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, where this recording and all our other recordings will be posted. And with that, we want to tell you good night and happy Tuesday. Bye-bye.